And welcome aboard, everybody. Steve Malzberg here, and I am happy to say that once again I am joined by the one and only Roger Stone, of course, longtime confidant and advisor to Donald Trump, and now President Trump, of course, and the author of a great book, The Making of the President 2016, and the star and the subject, of course, of Netflix's Get Me Roger Stone. And you could check him out at stonecoldtruth.com and see everything I just said and so much more. Hi, Roger. How are you?
Great, Steve. Great to be with you. Happy Independence Day.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's talk about first some of the nonsense out there, but let's address it and then move on. And that is the I know you weighed in on Joe and Mika, but let's start with the latest, the retweeting of this video, or the tweeting of this video. We all are familiar with Donald Trump from the wrestling video where he, pounced on somebody, was Vince McMahon or whomever. I didn't even think it was really Donald Trump in the video who pounced on McMahon. I thought it was a double, and then they had him walking away. Nonetheless, he put it out over the weekend with CNN covering the head of the person being hit by Donald Trump. And the media and everybody else has gone nuts. What's your take on that? Does it cross any lines? How do you interpret it? What does it mean?
No, Steve, I really don't think it does. Look, the Joe and Mika have just piled vituperation on the president. They've called him a dictator. They've called him an idiot. They've questioned his sanity.
Yeah, dementia. Yeah, right on down the line.
They've questioned his intelligence. They've called him a thug, a goon, and so on. And, frankly, one of Donald Trump's most important rules is if you hit him, you're going to get hit back. We don't have a president who draws a line in the sand and then sits back helplessly while our adversaries cross it. Donald Trump gives as good as he gets, and he isn't going to take these personal attacks from the mainstream media laying down. It's interesting because I really do think, Steve, that much of Joe Scarborough's animus towards the president is the fact that Joe Scarborough wanted to be president himself in 2016. I direct your attention to a tweet from Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida, who has known Scarborough most of his adult life, and he says every political conversation he's had with Joe Scarborough ended with Joe talking about being president. So I think there's a jealousy factor here that's very real.
Interesting, very interesting, and I'll check out those tweets, certainly. By the way, I don't know what he would run as, what the party of Rhino? I mean, what would he run as?
He was once considered a conservative Republican, but he's in the ego party. And then yesterday we had this entire question. It looks apparent to me that it was Mika who recommended to Ivanka Trump that the White House hire Dina Habib Powell, which is a head scratcher because Dina Powell is a globalist, is a liberal, is a neocon, close ties to George Soros. Her best friend is Valerie Jarrett. Her other best friend is Huma Abedin. What she's doing in the in the Trump White House is a mystery. And I think we now know the answer to the mystery. And that is she was recommended by Mika.
And do you have any idea why? Like you said, it's strange bedfellows. And A, why? And B, why would the White House acquiesce?
Well, first of all, I think they're all A-listers. Secondarily, Ivanka and her husband still have enormous clout in this administration, particularly early on in the administration and particularly on personnel matters. This is one of the greatest problems of the Trump administration. At least half the people inside the administration are fighting against the administration's agenda and Donald Trump's agenda. But in the case of Dina Powell, I think this is particularly egregious. Why do we have a Bushite? Why do we have a neocon? Why do we have someone who I guarantee you did not vote for Donald Trump on the White House staff? There are many capable Trumpites who could fill that job.
Let me just go back to the CNN thing, because you haven't touched on that yet specifically. I mean, you say you didn't think it crossed the line. Does it do any damage? Is it a threat to journalists? I mean, what do you think Trump intended to accomplish by putting it out there?
People need to lighten up, okay? Donald Trump is not the one who wants to censor the news. That's the tech left. That's the people at CNN, Yahoo, Twitter, Facebook, and so on. Donald Trump opposes censorship, and nobody objects to Joe and Mika's right to say whatever stupid thing they want to say. So I just think everybody needs to cool down here. Masking all of this is the fact that the president probably had one of the best weeks of his presidency. The Supreme Court ruling in his favor on the travel ban, for example. I really think that he nailed the question of whether there were tapes of James Comey. Remember, Donald Trump never said there were tapes. He never said he had tapes. He questioned whether there were tapes. What we now know is that the Obama administration was taping 20 million Americans illegally in violation of the Constitution. This is a scandal that the mainstream media is not covering, but the FISA court specifically criticized the Obama administration for this unconstitutional overreach. So this isn't Roger Stone saying it, or Newsmax, or Stone Cold Truth, or InfoWars. This is the FISA court. This is a serious matter that, Steve, has just been swept under the rug.
Let me ask you about a report today, and again, it's a report, so you take it with a grain of salt, that Steve Bannon is pushing for an increased tax rate on the wealthiest Americans. He says he'd like to see a rate with a 4 in front of it. It seems out of step and out of the mainstream of what Republicans and someone like Steve Bannon might be expected to push for. Do you believe that this report is accurate? And if so, why would Bannon be pushing this? They say in order to pay for tax cuts for the middle class, but I don't think a lot of people are going to be happy about that.
Well, my understanding is that he has floated the idea of a higher rate in one bracket, in one income
right, the highest,
group.
Yeah.
Well, look, I understand that there is some desire to leaven against the charge that these are tax cuts for the rich. You run into the same problem when the president proposes cutting the corporate income tax rate, saying, oh, he wants to cut taxes on corporations. Well, corporations are what creates jobs. And when corporations go to China or Mexico or Canada because their tax rate for corporations is lower than ours, you can see the efficacy and why Donald Trump wants to cut the corporate tax rate, for example. I'm not going to prejudge Bannon. I haven't spoken to him. I don't know if the reports are accurate. I understand the political implications of what he may be trying to do.
Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you this. Donald Trump's going to meet on the sidelines at the upcoming meeting with the leaders with Vladimir Putin. Should he bring up, will he bring up, and do you think it's appropriate that he bring up anything to do with the quote-unquote Russian meddling with the elections?
I don't think there's anything to bring up, Steve, because the Russian meddling with the elections simply does not exist. We may have some memos in which Boris and Ivan talk about it, but there's just no evidence that this ever happened. I'm looking forward to my testimony on the 24th of July. I had hoped that it would be in public, since a number of the Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee have maligned me and made false statements and misstatements about me and my activities. But I have agreed, since they will release the transcript almost immediately, I have agreed to testify in closed session. And I'm very much looking forward to setting the record straight.
Yeah, well, you and I have talked about that for a long time. It's 3 weeks from today, and I wish it was in public too, because I think you deserve that opportunity, and it would be a great show. I'd love to see you go face to face and head to head, if you will, with some of the people who have said things about you that you claim, and I believe you are just simply not true.
But in this case, the president launched an attack on Syria, one of Russia's allies. He nixed a very, very lucrative deal for Exxon that they wanted to do in Russia. There's no evidence that Donald Trump is laying down for the Russians in any way. The evidence is that this whole Russian collusion canard is manufactured by John Podesta, who desperately wants to distract attention for the fact that he and his brother and Bill and Hillary Clinton were making millions of dollars off of the oligarchs around Putin. So it's a classic distraction strategy based on what I have seen.
How is it possible that the media barely has mentioned that Bernie Sanders and his wife are under federal investigation for something as really serious as, you know, cooking the books for a loan when she was president of a college, and then that the senator's office, according to one report that I read, one of the bank managers or the head of the bank who gave the loan said they felt pressure from the senator's office to give the loan, and yet you would think this doesn't exist.
You know, it's extraordinary. But Steve, once again, you see the double standard for conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats. Richard Nixon's campaign had some low-level individuals with the bad judgment to break into the Watergate. Barack Obama has illegally wiretapped, or in this case, surveilled, as many as 20 million Americans, according to the FISA court. I would say that's a much larger scandal. Show me the front page story on the New York Times or the Washington Post.
All right, you're just back from a trip overseas where you went to a few countries. Talk about what that was all about. Very interesting, and how George Soros fits into some of this.
Steve, I visited, first of all, the birthplace of my ancestors, Hungary. I also went to Romania and Turkey, and in all three places I met with government officials who are fighting the efforts by George Soros to subvert those democracies, to overturn those democratically elected governments, and to form a totalitarian state. The Hungarian government has been very strong in denouncing Soros and his plans. Unfortunately, the Trump State Department, under the direction of a woman named Fiona Hill, a former Soros associate who now works in the Donald Trump NSA, National Security Apparatus, is opposing the Hungarian government's efforts and has blocked any effort by the United States to support the Hungarians in their efforts to throw off the Soros takeover revolutionary scheme.
Got one more for you. I don't want to throw you a curve here, but there's a Media Matters story, which I believe is from today, where they accuse you of being bought off by Jeff Deal, who was going to run, one of the candidates wants to run against Elizabeth Warren, because, I don't know, they say that after he rented your email list, you supported him, blah, 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 blah. And this is Media Matters, your friend.
Yeah, well, look, anything, you can always tell when David Brock is lying. His lips are moving. Nothing at Media Matters for America can believe. This is the ultimate fake news site. My company did rent some lists to Mr. Deal for his campaign. They evidently raised quite a bit of money. During that process, I examined his campaign and his credentials, and frankly, I became very impressed. He's an excellent candidate. He's a solid conservative. He is not an establishment Republican, and he'll be a great replacement for Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, in the U.S. Senate.
I love Pocahontas. All right. Listen, Roger, enjoy your 4th of July. We look forward to speaking with you, if not before the testimony, certainly after the testimony. And have a great one. Stay healthy.
Many thanks, Steve. Happy Independence Day.
Roger Stone, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, and of course, check out stonecoldtruth.com. You can find out his schedule. You can read more about The Making of the President 2016, which is the great bestseller you should be picking up. And the movie, Get Me Roger Stone on Netflix. I am in it, not once, but twice. How that happened, I don't know, but it did. All right, folks, have a great 4th of July, and stay connected. Newsmaxtv.com, and of course the website newsmax.com.